in the studio, we are joined by a legal expertise, a lawyer by profession, David McAfee, who will also be trying to explore the legal perspective pertaining to this situation. So we are glad to have you here. And before I go ahead, I'll take this opportunity to ask Roger to say hello to you and introduce himself. And then I'll do the same to David. I'll start with David. David, could you kindly say hello to the audience and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm David McAfee. I'm the founding partner of McAfee and Nice, which is a Boston immigration law firm. And we specialize in immigration, but particularly asylum law. Awesome. So this is what my expertise is.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. And as you learn, Mr. Paul Rusesabagina is also a permanent resident of the United States. So that is in part one of the reasons we thought it would be great to have you on this show. I'll also ask Roger to introduce himself to the audience. Hello, Rogers.
Hello, hi, Rogers. So I'm Roger Rusesabagina. Thank you for inviting me to discuss my father's current situation in Rwanda. And I'm very happy to be here and to be able to share what I know with your audience.
Oh, thank you so much. So without further ado, Roger, we know I've watched the movie Hotel Rwanda, and that in part it's how I got connected to your dad's story.
Right.
He's the gentleman who risks his everything and saves 1,263 both Hutus and Tutsis from the genocide. Now he sheltered them in the hotel that he was managing, because he was a hotel manager, right?
Right.
And now, given what we've observed and what the media are kind of picked on, was they actually compared him to Oscar Schindler, who saved 1,100 Jews who were actually trying to escape the German issue with Hitler. So could you kindly tell us a little bit about who is Paul Rusesabagina? Who is your dad? Because all we know is this imagery that we have observed that is in relation to the genocide, but as well as the story that as it is outlined in Hotel Rwanda.
Yeah, so first of all, my father, first of all, his number one job, and I think his pride, he's a father of 6 children. He's a grandfather of many grandchildren. I cannot count, but he has quite a few. And also, he's an uncle, he's a friend. He wrote in his book, he's an ordinary man. He's just a regular guy, proud to be from the village and peasant. But so he just happened to be in Rwanda in 1994 when he had the genocide, and he found himself in a position where he was able to help. And people who know my father well, they know he'll stand up for what he believes is right. No matter what you do, you can put a gun on his head, you can say what you want. He will always, always stand up for what he believes. He will die standing up for what he believes is the truth of how people should be treated. And I think that summarizes him in just a couple of words.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now, we know that there have been critics of President Kagame.
Right.
And I know that your dad is he utilized I should call it the celebrity, something that he actually attained out of that role that had been depicted in Hotel Rwanda. He leveraged that because he became one of the most prominent or famous Rwandans.
Right.
And so he utilized that to voice, like you've said, is somebody who speaks out his mind. Right. He utilized that to speak out against some of the issues that he realized that pertained to the country he comes from, or he hails from.
Right.
But then recently we also had that what has been actually alleged by the Rwandese government is that he's been involved in trying to fight the government of President Kagame,
Right.
or President Paul Kagame. But I don't know how much the family knows about that. Could you kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in Rwanda, anyone who dares to oppose or speak up against the government, you speak up against Paul Kagame, you become an enemy, you're depicted as a terrorist or as an enemy. So I'm not aware of any terrorist activities, from my father, never heard of that. So that's news to me. My father recently got involved, not recently, but he got involved in politics, just voicing his opinion. But it's also the opinion of many Rwandans. We have thousands of Rwandan refugees in Uganda, in Congo, in Zambia, in Europe, in America, in Belgium, in many countries. These people cannot return home. Some people left the country in 1994. It's been 26 years. These people can't go back. So some children were born in the Congo in the forest, and these people have struggled for 26 years. And the crime is that maybe their parents did not agree with Kagame's regime, so these people cannot go back. So my father was trying to lend a voice to those people. Like he said, thanks to the movie Hotel Rwanda, he had a bigger microphone. He could reach a larger audience. So he used that voice. He could have sat down in Brussels or in Texas and just relaxed, and he was going to be happy. But he felt like he had a duty to speak up for the voiceless, the people who are in the Congo and in Uganda, people who are being harassed by Rwanda, even as refugees. So I think it's in that sense that he just decided to speak up, and then of course the Rwanda is going to label you as a terrorist, as an enemy, and Rwanda has money and have a very strong PR machine that they can demonize anyone. I think they tried with my dad for the last 16 years. It hasn't worked. That's why I guess they decided to kidnap him, which is not what we're dealing with, and we're trying to let the world know that my father was kidnapped in Dubai, brought to Rwanda against his own will, and when they showed my father to the press in Dubai on Monday, I think it was August 31st, they said that the spokesman for RIB, the Rwanda Investigative Bureau, said that they arrested him in collaboration with multiple countries acting on an international arrest warrant. Now, it happened to be that the United Arab Emirates, they came out and said, we did not arrest this man because there was no warrant against him. So there was no reason to arrest him. So Rwanda knew they were wrong because there was no warrant. Dubai did not arrest him. So on Saturday or Sunday last weekend, Kagame had a press conference. He said, oh no, we did not arrest him. What RIB said on Monday wasn't true. They lied. The truth is that we lured him into the country. We tricked him into going to the country, which is still legal. And David can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a lawyer, but it's my understanding that kidnapping someone or luring somebody into your country, especially if you know that person's going to be in danger, that's illegal. That's my understanding. And now, after Kagame's speech, and someone probably told them that what they just said was illegal, so they went back 2 days later. The spokesperson for RIB, I forgot his name, he came out and said, oh no, what we said on the 31st and what the president said on Saturday, all those are lies. Now the truth is that Mr. Paul Rusesabagina flew from Texas to Dubai, decided to rent a private jet and go to Rwanda. He came as a tourist, I guess, or he wanted to see gorillas, or I don't know what he was going to see. And then when he walked into immigration, they arrested him. So they were also surprised that he just showed up, like surprised. And that's three different versions from the government. It's not like a random government spokesperson. It's the spokesperson for RIB. So that's an official version. And then the president himself. And then you have the Secretary General of the RIB that had three different versions in 2 weeks. So something is wrong with that. And we're trying to get to the bottom of this.
So what you're trying to say is the contradictions when it comes to articulating on how he actually ended up in Rwanda.
Exactly. Because I think someone must told them that if you arrest, I mean, they thought they had it in the park when they said, hey, we had arrested him, one from multiple countries, but they didn't think that there's an actual investigation, not the Rwandese style investigation. If you have a real investigation, you're gonna have those countries gonna have to come forward and say how they collaborated. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have those countries, you need to change your mind quickly. So a week later, the president came with that version where they tricked them. Now, what we have been trying to know is the company that the private jet that transported my father to Rwanda belongs to Genjet. So Genjet is a company that also manages Kagame's planes. I think he has 2 or 3 planes or 4 in that company. Kagame himself used that private jet before. His son apparently uses that private jet before. So now we asked Genjet, our lawyer wrote to Genjet to say that, you can just release the name of the passengers that were on the plane. The pilot can speak up and say, how was my father transported? Or how did he get on the plane? How did he get off? Who paid for that plane? All that information, Genjet has been hiding and denying our request. They're going to have to speak up at some point, I hope. So something is wrong. And we still don't understand. Because our understanding is that my father was going to Dubai to meet with someone and then come back to Texas. So, and then we see him in the news. So he disappeared on Thursday. That's the last time we heard from him. Because it was my nephew's birthday. So my dad sent out a message to the family group chat and said, wish happy birthday, and said, I'll see you soon. So he's in Dubai. That's the last time on Thursday night. And then he disappeared. Excuse me. We couldn't find him. We didn't hear from him until Monday when he showed up in news and people started calling me up 5 o'clock in the morning and said, is that true? I said, what? And he was in the news, handcuffed, and that was a shock to all of us.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. So I'll go to David a little bit. David, it is understood that the existing UN Convention on the Status of Refugees, which was, I think, drafted in 1951, provides for protections for refugees, asylees, or political exilees. And it also warrants that they not be returned to their countries of origin, especially if there are fears that they will be persecuted or prosecuted in that case. So now, whereas individuals, whereas we also know that individual countries have what they call the territorial sovereignty, of being able to manage their affairs without the interference of others. We've realized that for now 2 cases, there is one pertaining to, I believe it was Jamal Khashoggi, and now presently, who was also a U.S. permanent resident, and now Mr. Paul Rusesabagina, who is also a permanent U.S. resident, that have been actually arrested, or issues are now happening toward them in these circumstances. Mr. Khashoggi got murdered, we learned, somewhere in Turkey. Now we've learned that Mr. Paul Rusesabagina also was kidnapped, according to the family, from Dubai into Rwanda. So, first of all, would you agree with the assertion that these protections are not enough? Should the many political exilees and refugees or asylees be concerned because of what is actually transpiring in these 2 cases?
Okay. First, I'm going to address the issue of the international warrant, because that is just completely false. Any kind of international warrant would go through Interpol, and the host country, the UAE in this case, would have arrested, Roger's father and held him pending extradition back to Rwanda. So that's not what happened. So there was no warrant. As far as the protection's concerned, the protection is they're not going to send you back to your country. In the United States, somebody that's granted asylum or is a refugee coming to the United States is allowed to stay here essentially permanently and can become citizens of the United States, and we will not send them back. The problem really comes up when somebody exercises their right to free speech and chooses to travel. They become more of a target for the countries. They see them as being criminals or something of that sort. But in this situation, it's very difficult to protect even a citizen of a country when they're traveling outside of the United States. Relating again also to the UN protocols, Rwanda signed both of the protocols, the one in 61 and 67, 51, 67 rather, and but UAE never signed it, so they were not obligated under those conventions. So that creates some ambiguity.
I see.
Go ahead.
No. I was just saying I see. Sorry.
Oh, sure. So just again, as far as the focus is somewhat on asylees and refugees. Hopefully, people won't get overly worried because those things happen.
Yeah.
But the real issue is that he's a citizen of Belgium, and he should be protected by Belgium, and that protection should be stronger than even for an asylee. And that's obviously something that didn't happen in his case.
So we realize that there is the absence of the international the mechanism for protection or law or enforcement of these statutes. So in the and now we've just learned that the European Union (EU) did not sign the documentation. So what do you think would be the alternative for refugees and the asylees in these cases? What do you think would be the possible alternative in this case?
Well, to be extremely careful about where you travel, obviously. It's really very unfortunate, and I have had clients also from Rwanda who have been politically active, one who is a leader of an opposition group, and he doesn't travel outside the United States, and he's even afraid being here. And if a country sees you as a criminal or as an opponent, I don't know that you could devise a mechanism to protect that everybody in that situation.
All right, thank you so much. So Roger,
Yes.
One of the things that I read about was that the family. You mentioned that in 2010, a Rwandan prosecutor had claimed that Mr. Rusesabagina had rather wired funds to a Congo-based rebel group. And that he had been interviewed by both the FBI and the Belgian entity. Could you kindly elaborate on that?
I don't know many details about that case. I know Rwanda has brought up some charges, I think last year or the year before, in Belgium, and the Belgian prosecution examined those charges, and they realized they were baseless, so they were just rejected because they were baseless. So in Rwanda, people can make up charges, and you take someone to court, and the person is, tried and sentenced within like a few days. But if you go to an actual court where you have to play by the rules, you cannot. Exactly. Then you have to prove. You can't just I can wake up in the morning and charge anybody with anything. But I have to go through the court system and prove my point. So they tried that in Belgium. I think maybe they even tried that in the U.S., and those charges were dismissed. And if they wanted to appeal, they could have appealed, but kidnapping is not the solution. If you get defeated, you don't go back and say, let me just kidnap the guy that just defeated me. the whole finance the Red Bull group. I think they said that he sent $700 to a Red Bull group. How can you find a war? You can't fight a war with $700. I know in Africa the dog was a long way, but not that long. So I think all these charges were fabricated. My father gets a lot of calls from people in Africa, like many Africans when you live in Europe or Belgium, people you know, people you don't know, people who know someone you know, because they need help. They need a couple hundred here. They need some money. People are refugees. It's a tough life. So maybe he sent somebody a couple $100, maybe $1,000 to help. You know, you have kids who are sick, kids need to go to school, the person needs to go to the hospital. And especially after the movie came out, people assumed that my father was rich. So you get more calls than you ever got before from random people. So probably maybe he sent, you know, a couple hundred. He didn't send $1 million to somebody and say, go buy, you know, machine guns. You know, you send what you can send, but he helped a lot of people, and that's not, you know, because of the movie or when the movie came out. It was like that before '94. It's always been like that. When you come from the village and you have, you know, the family member in the village, they think you've made it.
Like all immigrants.
Like all immigrants, especially you're here, people always assume that you can always help. And it's tough not to help when you live in a comfortable life here, and you have, you know, maybe your neighbors back, you know, or your family's neighbor in Africa who they have a kid in the hospital who are just struggling. And if you can send someone $200 or $500 and help them, you know, resolve a very big issue, then it's not going to make you poor, but it's going to make a huge difference in their lives. Yeah. And every African has that net. And Rwanda will go to Western Union, and I don't know how they even get in that information. They must be collaborating with someone. And my father, they've been surveying my father for the last 25 years, 25 years. So, and I want to tell people, we left Rwanda in 1996 because my father was being persecuted.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
When we left, because the government was after my father for some reason, and I won't go into details. So we fled to Belgium and applied for asylum because and the Belgian government worked with the UN. After they examined our case, they said these people have a legitimate reason why they're fleeing their country, so they gave us asylum. So we became refugees for a few years, and then we became citizens, I think, in 1999, around that time. So we never, and my father never showed any intention of going back to Rwanda. Not with the current situation, because if you fled, we fled Kagame and Kagame's system in 1996. So there's no reason to go back because Kagame and Kagame's system is still there 24 years later. So for them to say that my father went back on his own, it does not make any sense because he knows it will be suicidal. And if you want to commit suicide, I don't think you rent a private jet to go just throw yourself in a fire. You can just take a bus. You know, it may take longer to get there. But what I'm trying to say is that maybe I know mostly the case of Rwandans, I don't know other refugees, but there was a time when you became a refugee, you left your country, you went to a neighboring country. You just go to Uganda or to Burundi. You just stay there. No one bothers you because you were a refugee. You were protected. Now, Rwanda is hunting people. It used to be they started hunting in the Congo and in Burundi, and then they went to Belgium and even to the United States. And this has been happening for 26 years. So you run, and then you run out of places to run. And this is dangerous, and it's good that the world now is getting to see the reality of many Rwandans. I live in Massachusetts. I sleep with one eye open. And we're, 10,000 miles away from Rwanda? And it shouldn't be that way. I left Rwanda 24 years ago. I became a Belgian citizen, American citizen, and I'm far enough from Rwanda that I should feel secure and be able to sleep.
But you don't.
But I am not. And my father is the same thing. He fled to Belgium. He was not safe enough in Belgium that he moved to Texas, where he's safer, but not 100% safe. So if you're not safe in Texas, where are you going to be safe? Can this be addressed? I hope so. And I think that's a discussion that we're going to have in the coming months and years.
All right. Thank you for indulging in that. So Uh, David, as a law firm, have you, without divulging information that is specific or private, have you come across such cases in your law firm? And if you have, what has that been like? And have there been any challenges or obstacles that you've encountered along the way? Tell us anything about that.
Sure. Well, I can't really divulge client information, of course, but I can tell you a couple of examples of similar situations. It always becomes a different type of situation when a person has more exposure in their country. Maybe they're more famous or have done something like Roger's father, who was obviously an awesome person. Those are the people that sometimes their countries fight to try to keep them from getting asylum or try to get them to get sent back. And they put up a struggle. And it's, there are also countries that use a lot more of what's available now on social media to implicate people. I had a client who was from, technically wasn't my client. I'm going to just say the country. I'm not going to say any other countries, but this one was Cameroon. And he happened to be involved in protesting in the United States. He was a US citizen. And he went back to visit some family members in Cameroon, and he was arrested because somebody from the government had seen his photographs on social media and knew that he had participated in protests against the government. And that took a lot of diplomacy on behalf of the United States to get him released, which still took him probably 6 months in a pretty serious situation in Cameroon. Jails aren't so great, but even for other countries and other clients, if they're high profile, the country might make up some false information about crimes or political action or use of guns or something in order to make the United States government doubt whether these people really are deserving of asylum. There are bars to asylum, including being a persecutor of others, taking action, even probably what they're trying to say about Roger's father is that he is a persecutor of others or has assisted in terrorism because he gave money to a terrorist organization. I mean, that's the allegation. It doesn't mean it's true at all. And in fact, I'd be surprised if it was.
Oh, thank you so much. And as a follow-up, and I think this is the last question, are there any recent protections for these groups of people, the refugees, asylees, or political exilees here in the United States? And in particular to those beside actually even citizens and like the gentleman you've just mentioned or permanent residents. Are there any protections that have been drafted recently or that exist at all?
Sure. So there are protections for anybody inside the territory of the United States. They're protected by our Constitution. So somebody that comes with asylum or refugee status can stay here safely or as safely as possible in the United States with the protection of our government and our laws. Once they travel, it becomes a little bit more difficult. Somebody that travels as a citizen of the United States or even as a refugee carrying a refugee travel document, it has some protections, but unfortunately, as you alluded to earlier, each country has their own sovereignty. So, once you're in somebody else's, country, with their own borders that they're protecting, your rights go away a little bit. And what the resort is for any government is to deal through diplomacy. And, sometimes that doesn't work and sometimes it does. But the protection. There's nothing new as far as protections, as far as traveling, and people in the United States are still protected, although our current administration tries to slowly take away some of the protections or classifications for people that they would be considered to be asylum seekers or refugees.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Roger, lastly, so what message do you have for anybody who is sympathizing with your family? What have you done at this point, and what are you doing going forward? Because are you in contact with your dad? By the way, have you been able to establish that?
So the government gave my father a lawyer, a pro bono lawyer, who is a government employee. I think he's a member of the RPF, Army, or DMI, the Rwandan Intelligence, to represent him. Because they gave him a list of, I guess, 3 lawyers. That's what I understand. He chose 2 or something like that. And we never said that we were not able to afford a lawyer. You give a pro bono lawyer to someone who cannot afford to pay for a lawyer. So that lawyer has been contacting the family. We spoke to, my family spoke to my dad twice, I think, in the last 2 weeks. So they gave my dad a phone. He's in jail, so he's speaking from the jail cell with the people who are jailing him next to him. So they gave him a phone and said, call your family. So all he said was, I don't even think he said hi. He had a list of demands that he wanted, that they told him they needed. So he said, I need these documents and these documents and these documents. And then he called again, he has the same documents. So we asked him how he was doing. He said, do not speak about the case. You just have to say, to answer to what I'm telling you. So he cannot speak freely. So to say that I spoke to my dad, or we spoke to my dad as a family, we heard his voice, but we did not speak to him. Because you cannot speak to someone. If you get kidnapped, but the kidnapper say, okay, you can call your family, what are you going to say? Because those people are holding you. So when you turn off that phone, you're going to stay with them. And I'm sure my father is smart enough to try to survive in that environment. So he couldn't say much. So yes, we heard his voice. Did we communicate? Not really, because we couldn't say much of what we wanted to say. He couldn't say much of what he wanted to say. So is it communication? It just comes down to interpretation. All I can say is we heard his voice, and that's about it. We've been just trying to raise awareness, try to make noise in the media, just to let the world see the Rwandan regime, because Rwanda, they have been painting Rwanda as this Singapore of Africa, where everything is beautiful, people are free, the safest country in the world. People are getting to see Rwanda. My father's not the first person to get kidnapped, probably not the last, hopefully the last, who knows, but definitely not the first. Is one of many. But those people who have been kidnapped before, no one spoke up for them. They did not have a voice. So my father was fortunate enough to have friends and family who knew people who could just make noise and just bring attention to the issue. So we're very thankful to the Belgian government, to the American government, because they've been helping a lot. The last time my father went to court on Thursday, there were 2 American embassy employees just went there to look at him and see how things went. So it is good to have someone and just another set of eyes. But we're just thankful, and we just ask people to just keep sharing on social media, hashtag free Rusesabagina, free paulrusesabagina, and just make as much noise as possible. And then the Rwandan government is going to have to. We have a team of lawyers here in the United States, and one in Belgium, and we have about 6 lawyers. So they're ready to go to Rwanda. But they have my father saying that he wants the lawyer who has 0 experience. I haven't seen any. I don't think he ever defended anybody. Or maybe he had like one case that somebody maybe stole chickens, they had to defend him or something like that. But when you have a case like this, you want the best lawyer you can get. And we have some of the best lawyers in the business. They're ready to go to Rwanda. The Rwandan government is making it difficult. We have a lawyer in Rwanda, a Rwandese lawyer on the ground, who has been trying to see my dad for 2 weeks. And he hasn't seen him, because my dad has to sign a paper so that lawyer can represent him. But how can he sign the paper if you can't get to him?
They haven't made attempts to.
They haven't. So they come in the news and say, we never heard of that lawyer. We had that lawyer more than 2 weeks ago. He's been trying to go. He's a good lawyer that was highly recommended. We hired him. We're paying him to go defend my father, but he can't even have access to him because they have their government lawyer we have to go through the government lawyer. So we're still trying to fight so we can get his legal team over there. He can, hopefully they can talk to him and advise him, get him the right advice that he need. But it's very difficult because the Rwandan government just make it so hard, because I don't understand why you want to insist on giving someone a free lawyer when the family has a team of lawyers that are working, that are ready to go. So that's a major fight. And I heard that they're going to put him in prison for 30 days before he goes to trial. So we get surprised. Everything just happened by surprise. My father went to court on Monday to apply for bail. But we didn't know he was going to court. It just surprised me. People text you, hey, I see your father in the news going to court. That so-called lawyer didn't send us a text and say, hey, your father's going to text on Monday, get ready. So I don't think that person, the lawyer, is working for us or with us. He's working for the government. He was hired by the government. He's a member of the RPF. He's a member of the Canadian military. So personally, I do not trust him. That's my personal opinion. We have our legal team, and Rwanda should let our legal team just go do their job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Lastly, David, any advice to some of the individuals or asylees or refugees in the United States? And you could also remind us about your law firm and where you're based. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Apply for asylum. There's nothing wrong with it. There's still an excellent avenue for getting relief in the United States. It's still a country that accepts and protects refugees and asylees, at least while they're in the United States sovereignty. Our firm is in Boston. It's McAfee and Nice LLC. We're in 170 Federal Street in Boston, and we're on the web, mcafeelaw.com.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
All right.
thank you, Roger, for coming.
No,
very much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We appreciate you spending this evening with us. This was your show, Catch Up, where we always engage community members. Roger is a member of our community, and we thought that because this story comes close home to us, we thought it was important to invite him so we can have this conversation and know what's going on. A lot of community members are refugees in the United States. A lot of you are asylees. A lot of you are exilees, actually. And these issues actually pertain to you, or in a way they kind of bring the attention of these issues to right to your homes. And so that is in that spirit we thought we'd have this conversation, so we see how best we can be able to understand the way forward and how we can navigate this. And that's why we brought a lawyer on board so that this conversation can really be can make sense to us. So thank you so much for spending this evening with us. We look forward to having you on the same show, Catch Up, next Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Thank you so much. My name is Roger Rusesabagina.